There is an energy within you that has never been fully explained. It's not just sexual, it's spiritual. This energy drives your desires, your thoughts, and your willpower. And if you don't learn to master it, it will master you. It doesn't matter how much motivation or knowledge you have. Without mastery over sexual energy, the modern man remains lost. The world wants you to believe that pleasure is freedom, that the more you satisfy yourself, the freer you are. But that is the greatest lie ever told to man. The more you chase instant pleasure, the more of a slave you become, a slave to dopamine, to distraction, to spiritual exhaustion. You are trading your power for fleeting peaks of pleasure. Every time you give in to impulse, peace of your spirit fades. You feel the emptiness right after, but mask it with more stimulation. You don't realize you're being emptied, drained, weakened. The energy meant to make you a creator is being used to keep you weak. And no one will warn you about this, because a man who masters his sexual energy cannot be controlled. In this video, you'll discover the 7 sacred initiations every man must undergo to turn desire into strength, an ancient, forgotten, and hidden journey that weaves together tantra, alchemy, deep psychology, and masculine spirituality. Each initiation is a portal, and by the end of this journey, you won't be the same. You'll understand the true meaning of sexual energy. Every man who begins this path must go through what the ancients called the night of the spirit. There are no guides, no applause, only an absence, a brutal absence of stimuli, of distractions, of external voices. And it is there in the silence that the first initiation begins. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It is the absence of escape. No phone, no video, no pornography, no easy pleasure. All that remains is you, and everything you've tried to avoid for years suddenly surfaces. It is in the silence that you hear your body for the first time. Not the sexualized, aroused, masked body, but the exhausted one, scattered, disconnected from the soul. Silence reveals the voices you buried with pleasure, the anxiety that screamed beneath, the fear of not being enough, the doubt about who you really are. And that's why most give up here. The world has trained men to run from silence, to chase pleasure, distraction, anything to fill the void. But the initiated learns, the void is not the end, it is the portal. Silence is the first cave, and every hero must cross the cave before finding the fire. In this first rite, the man is called to stay, not to touch, not to flee, not to fill, but to feel. Here he realizes, desire is more mental than physical. It is an automatic response, not a real need. And when he stops reacting, something magical happens. Desire loses its grip on him. He doesn't repress, he observes. He doesn't hate himself, he understands. And in that space, between impulse and action, mastery is born. The initiation of silence is not glorious. There are no lights, no mystical revelations, only discomfort, internal tremors, and a maddening urge to give up. But the one who endures, who stands firm with no reward, takes the first step toward true masculine power. Because silence is more than absence. It is a mirror, and only a courageous man can look at himself completely, without filters, without pleasure, without distractions. The one who crosses the silence is ready to hear himself for the first time. After silence comes the heat, not the heat of the outer world, but the internal fire that begins to awaken. It is here that the initiated realizes desire didn't die. It simply stopped being artificially fed. And now, for the first time, he feels the fire of instinct in its purest form. That fire is not sin. It's not weakness. It is concentrated, intense, living, vital energy. But it comes without direction, without form, without filter. It burns. It's like holding a lit torch in your hands. You feel the power, but also the danger. The impulse is to release, to discharge, to relieve. But the initiated has been trained in silence. and now he watches the fire, without being burned. Here is born one of the greatest spiritual virtues, the ability to feel without reacting, to feel the heat of arousal, and choose not to turn it into escape, to feel desire flooding the body, and not identify with it. The common man reacts. He's commanded by pleasure, like an animal drawn by the scent of prey. But the initiated holds the fire within, and instead of exploding, he allows it to burn him from the inside. This burning doesn't destroy, it refines. Each contained impulse is a hammer forging the sword. Each desire not discharged is a drop of power being purified. And slowly, what was once raw instinct starts to transform into clarity, magnetism, presence. But this phase is also dangerous, because the fire deceives. It whispers, just a little, just tonight. It disguises itself as longing, as anxiety, as urgency. That's why the initiated needs absolute discernment. It's not about repression. It's about holding the bow until the arrow is ready to strike the right target. This is the initiation where many fall. They want peace without effort, power without discipline. But the true man knows, raw fire is only the beginning of refinement. He doesn't flee from the heat, he remains. He doesn't fight desire, he transforms it. And by the end of this phase, something shifts. Pleasure is no longer the master. It becomes the servant, because he who feels without reacting begins to master the invisible world within. After the man learns to contain the fire, the universe tests him. And the test doesn't come with swords, but with whispers, images, memories, invitations disguised as comfort. Here rises temptation, not as something external, but as the echo of unresolved desires. It arrives at the end of the day, in the quiet hours of the night, the moment the mind relaxes, and the soul weakens, comes with subtle promises. Just this once. You deserve it. There's nothing wrong. And if the man isn't vigilant, he falls, because temptation is clever. It knows your triggers. It wears the clothes of emotional need. It speaks with the voice of your ex, with the image from your feed, with the emptiness still hidden in your chest. But this isn't a battle against the world. It's a battle against the part of you that still wants to escape. The initiated must remember, every temptation is a question in disguise. And the question is always the same. Are you still a slave to pleasure? Or are you now devoted to your purpose? Here, the practice is not saying no out of fear. It's saying no out of love. Love for your energy, love for your clarity, love for the man you're becoming. Each time you resist, you grow. Each time you choose the harder path, you sink deeper roots. Because resisting temptation is not losing, it's proving to yourself that your mission matters more than momentary relief. It is in this phase that man learns the value of what he is building. He realizes that his sexual energy is sacred currency, and that every time he wastes it on impulse, he is financing the enemy of clarity, of discipline, of inner strength. This is why temptation is necessary. It reveals where weakness still lives. It exposes the cracks in the armor. And only the man who faces those cracks head-on can become unbreakable. The world will always test you where you still hesitate. But when you pass that test, when you stare temptation in the eyes and do not kneel, you don't return to where you were. You ascend. You begin to see pleasure not as an end, but as something to be experienced only when it no longer controls you. Because the man who has overcome temptation no longer needs pleasure to feel alive. He has already met himself, and that is more powerful than any orgasm. After conquering temptation, the man looks within and discovers a secret that changes everything. Desire was never the problem. The direction was. Sexual energy still lives within him, intense, pulsing, alive, but now it is clean, no longer impulsive, no longer wild. It has become raw material that can be shaped, elevated, transmuted. This is where real power begins. The the man learns that the same impulse that once dragged him down can now be channeled to build, to create, to heal. The energy that once rose only to the waist now rises to the chest, to the mind, to the spirit. He wakes up with greater focus, speaks with deeper presence, carries authority without raising his voice, because something inside him has begun to align. Desire and mission are finally on the same path. Transmutation isn't magic. It's alchemy. It's taking raw instinct and refining it. It's turning "I want pleasure now" into "I choose to build something eternal." In this stage, the man becomes more creative. Ideas flow. Intuition awakens. Magnetism increases, not because he's doing something right, but because he stopped wasting his vital force. The energy once used for relief is now used for expression. He begins to see desire as a signal, not a destination, a call to create, not a cry for consumption. And he realizes sexual desire at its core is the soul's way of saying, create, expand, give form to the invisible. And the more he listens to that call, the more he becomes a channel for something greater. Transmutation also brings peace, because desire is no longer a war. It becomes part of the flow. It no longer needs to be fought, only guided. Here, the man understands there is no separation between sexual and spiritual energy. It is all the same force, the same flame that can burn or illuminate. And the more he pours that energy into what he does, into what he touches, into what he creates, the closer he comes to his true essence, a man in harmony with his power. Because the man who transmutes desire no longer runs from it, he uses it, he honors it, and through it, he begins to transform the world around him. When a man learns to transmute desire, something unexpected happens. Sex begins to change its meaning. It is no longer a pursuit of relief, nor an emotional transaction. Sex begins to reveal itself as a sacred portal. What was once just discharge becomes communion. What was once instinct becomes presence. And the man understands, with his body, with his soul, that sex is a spiritual language, a code of light, an energetic fusion between two vibrational fields. The revelation is silent, but deep. Sex becomes a prayer made through the body. It is not just touch, it is surrender. Not just pleasure, but union of souls. It's not about receiving, it's about overflowing. And that only becomes possible when a man no longer depends on the act to feel whole. Because now he comes whole. He doesn't seek something in the other, he offers something of himself. At this stage, the man looks back and realizes how much he had been deceived. He sees how culture turned the sacred into entertainment, how pleasure became a product, how the female body was reduced to an object, and how he, without realizing it, had distanced himself from his own inner nobility. Revelation is also painful because it exposes the superficiality of past experiences. It awakens grief for everything that was touched without presence, felt without soul, consumed without honor. But that grief is necessary. It is the purification of the temple. It is the moment when a man decides he will never again enter a body that is not in tune with his soul. He becomes selective, not out of arrogance, but out of respect, because now he knows every energetic exchange shapes who he becomes. And sex without consciousness is not pleasure. It is fragmentation. Every time a man unites with someone soullessly, he splits. And every time he makes sex a ritual, he becomes whole. The true nature of sex is expansion of consciousness, the fusion of polarities, the dance between divine masculine and divine feminine. And when a man understands this, he no longer needs sex. He chooses it with wisdom, with reverence, with truth, because the man who has discovered the sacred in touch never again accepts being touched in haste. With the revelation of the sacred, the man now carries immense power, but also great responsibility. He realizes feeling the fire is not enough. He must guard it, protect its flame, without smothering it. This is where the guardian is born, not the warrior who fights desire, but the sage who walks alongside it. The guardian does not live in rigid abstinence, nor surrender to reckless hedonism. He has found balance, discipline with lightness, containment with awareness. He knows sexual energy is sacred fire, and fire is ambiguous. It warms or destroys, it illuminates or consumes. The secret lies in how you guide it. At this stage, the man masters time. He does not act on impulse. He chooses the right moment, the right place, the right person. His energy is no longer wasted. It is invested. Each choice carries purpose, and that is why he becomes magnetic. His presence carries silence. His gaze doesn't seek. It reveals, because he stopped begging for energy and began to generate his own. But this mastery demands vigilance. The guardian knows the world never stops calling. Immediate pleasure still lurks, offering shortcuts to a tired man. But now he recognizes the signs and responds with firmness. I honor my energy. I don't trade it for crumbs. Being a guardian is not about closing the heart, but opening it with discernment. It's knowing that vital energy is limited, and that being generous with it is a form of love. But only when there is energetic reciprocity and a soul present. The guardian is selective about what he consumes, who he connects with, what he thinks and feels, because he has understood. Everything is vibration, and everything nourishes or drains. He has learned to say no with peace, and to say yes with presence. He no longer needs to prove his masculinity with conquests, because he is whole. And whole men don't need to conquer, they radiate. This chapter marks the beginning of mastery, the transition from instinct to command, from raw desire to refined power. And the world around him begins to change, not because he tries to control it, but because he has learned to govern his inner kingdom. For the man who becomes the guardian of fire, becomes a source of light for all around him. The final initiation is not an effort. It is a state. It is not reached through force, but through surrender. Here, the man no longer fights desire, nor tries to control it. He has become one with it. The energy that once pulled him outward now sustains him from within. Sex is no longer impulse, nor performance, nor necessity. It is soul expression. It is pure presence. It is God touching God. The crowned man lives in reverence. Every gesture is a ritual. Every gaze is consecration. He does not seek pleasure. He offers presence. And the pleasure that flows from presence cannot be compared to anything the world could offer. Here, the body becomes a temple. Sexual energy becomes a silent prayer. And the most intimate act becomes the most sacred. There is no guilt. Don't get bored. No pressure. The polarity between masculine and feminine is no longer a war, but a divine dance. And he understands, true union does not happen between bodies, but between essences. This man is not in abstinence. He is in sovereignty. He can choose. He can love. He can overflow, but no longer from lack, only from abundance. The crown is not a trophy. It is a vibrational state. It is when the energy rises to the top of the head and connects with the divine. It is when desire doesn't descend to instinct, but rises to spirit. And the world recognizes this man, without him saying a word, because he carries something that cannot be faked. He carries peace. The peace of someone who is no longer a slave to the body, nor a prisoner of pleasure, nor a fugitive from silence. The peace of one who reconciled with his fire, and now lights the way for others. If you made it this far, it was not by accident. Something within you is awakening, something that no longer wants to be satisfied, but transformed. These 7 initiations don't belong to a religion, nor a closed system. They belong to the soul of the man who seeks truth. And if you are one of them, the world needs your light. If this journey touched you, comment below, I accept my initiation. Let's show the algorithm that conscious men are awakening. And if you know someone who needs this calling, share this video. Help rebuild the sacred masculine. Subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with us every week. Because here we don't run from the fire. We carry it with honor.